We are working without slides today. As I told Beth earlier, I said we're having an old-fashioned service with an old-fashioned boy today. Okay? I am Franklin Privette. I am a religious science minister, and I am a staff minister here at the Music City Center for Spiritual Living. And thank you. It's my great honor. And as you may have gathered from David and Elaine, my topic today is the divine feminine. And I feel like I've been set up so well by the two of them. And I came up with this topic because as tiny tots, that was the way we viewed our mothers or whoever was serving in this capacity. Before birth, there was absolutely no question about who the divine feminine was. And in religious science, we give it additional meaning, which David introduced us to and which I will be talking more about. Well, anyway, happy Mother's Day. And I hold this day in great honor and reverence. I was fortunate enough to have my own mother in my life until I was in my 60s, and I thought she was the greatest mother in the world. I have heard people say that we choose our own parents. I don't know if we do or not, but I do say if I chose mine, it was the best decision I ever made because both of them were awesome. And when I say Happy Mother's Day, I am talking to biological mothers and all the other people who have served as mothers in their life. And this includes a lot of men, of course, and a lot of people who have been temporary mothers. And the first Mother's Day, according to what I read, was in 1908. There was a peace activist by the name of Anna Jarvis who really pushed to have this celebration to honor our mothers. And in 1914, President Wilson made it an official holiday. Now, by the 1920s, Miss Jarvis was turned off because of the way we were celebrating it with a lot of cards and candy and flowers and things, and she didn't feel that was an appropriate way for us to celebrate Mother's Day. But Ms. Jarvis, wherever you are, we're still doing it, and I think we're going to continue to. Now, on this day, many adults see this as a day to make amends for all the trouble they caused their mothers when they were growing up. I know I did that. But my hat goes off to those young mothers who have infants, who have infants too young to realize the sacrifices that were being made for them. Emerson said in one of his essays, "Infancy conforms to nobody. All conform to it." And so even though we say it takes a village to raise a child, we know that the young moms and dads are on the cutting edge. Now, it is unfortunate, I think, that all of the celebration and the honor that we give to mothers on one day is not extended to women all the time. You know, thousands of years ago, in Egypt and some other countries, there were goddesses and there were priestesses. Women pretty much ran the culture. And that wasn't very good. They were pretty brutal, especially to some men. But you know, our women today are just as divine just as divinely feminine as those were thousands of years ago. But somehow or another, things got turned around, and so men took over. And that didn't work out too well either. I think it would be good if we could try equality so that we would treat our women and our men equally. We know that in many cases, women are treated as second-class citizens. They used to. We're doing a lot better than that now. But in a lot of religious denominations, women are not allowed to serve as clergy or in high offices. And I am happy to say, as a religious science minister, that from the very beginning, we have had women ministers in religious science. And today we have more women ministers than we have men. And we have more practitioners, more licensed practitioners who are women than we have men. The first licensed practitioner, one of the first two licensed practitioners, was Ernest Holmes' mother, our founder's mother, Anna Holmes. It's interesting for me, I still have trouble remembering that women did not have the right to vote until 1920, when Tennessee ratified the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. I'm sorry that Alma Sanford is not here today to hear me say that, because she celebrates it all the time, bless her heart. We know there's also job discrimination for women, lower pay, even though women graduate from college with higher percentages than men in many cases, but at least as many women as men graduate from college. 1 year after graduation, the women are making less money than the men. I wonder if some of our cultural emphasis on men may be related to our concept of God. We tend to think of God many times as being a man. And though we have learned in religious science that's not the case, we still have a tendency to slip back into that belief. So, thinking of God as the father or as the mother or whatever is really not appropriate. Somehow or another, this thing of God creating man in his own image got turned around, and man created God in his image. Personally, I like to think of God as being the infinite divine spirit. And when I think of God as being the infinite divine spirit, I don't have to refer to it as he or she. I can refer to it as it, and it is perfectly fine, because it's okay for us to talk about spirits as being its. But I use the word God a lot because it's just a lot easier to say God than it is infinite divine spirit. But I hope everybody knows what I'm referring to when I say God. When we say that we are individualizations of the divine spirit, we are not talking about any particular gender, because we know that that God, the infinite divine spirit, is genderless or gender inclusive, whichever way we want to look at it. Now, if we can move on just a little bit here to the concept of mothering, and that broadens it a little bit. We know that mothers are responsible for the continuation of all of the higher species, of all species, and particularly the human species. Those of you who are pet owners, I'm sure, have your hearts warmed by the vision of a mother dog and a litter of puppies, or a mother cat and a litter of kittens. When I was growing up on the farm, nothing thrilled me more than a newborn calf, a newborn colt, or goat, or a litter of baby pigs. And it was not unusual around our house in early summer for a hen to come out of hiding with a group of baby fuzzy chicks. All of our chickens, of course, were free range in those days. This was amazing to me. Of course, I knew about eggs developing into chicks because my mom would save the eggs and set them under hens. And it was amazing to know that eggs, just like I ate for breakfast, could develop into a baby chick that was able to walk around and peep and see and do all kinds of things in only 3 weeks. And subsequently, as a biology student and biology teacher, I have learned a lot more about it, but it still absolutely amazes me. Now, interestingly, it was not just a change that took place in the eggs. The hens would have a change as well. I'm sure many of you have probably heard the expression, mad as a setting hen. It was very common in my day. And what it amounts to is that the hen, who had been very docile, suddenly became very protective, and she would attack you if you tried to get to her eggs or take care of her or do anything with her chicks. This would continue until the chicks reached a certain age. But we know, of course, nowadays that baby chicks are able to take care of themselves. This, if it only happened one time, we'd say it was a miracle. But it happens all the time, and so we know that it really is physical laws in operation. Now, what I didn't realize at that time was that the roosters that paraded around in the yard had something to do with these eggs developing into baby chicks. And what I also didn't know at the time was that something very similar to that was taking place in the formation of all the other kinds of babies, though it wasn't in a shell that we could actually see. Now, the mothers of baby calves and colts and everything that are able to walk around are very protective of them as well. But the mothers of baby kittens, puppies, rabbits have to take very close care of their babies because their eyes are closed and they're just are not fully formed. Now, to some degree, this is true of human babies as well. And that's where the mother comes in. And that's where we become very bonded to our mothers or whoever is taking care of us at a young age. Now, interestingly, we have learned in science that the male and the female make equal genetic contributions to the formation of the baby chick or whatever it is. That's not entirely true because the mother provides all of the subcellular organelles for the developing embryo. And these are all very, very important and allow the embryo to go on and develop into a baby. Somehow or another, this is not mentioned very much. I always mentioned it in my biology classes, of course. Okay. Now, while this was taking place with animals on the farm, something else was taking place all of the time which is our greatest metaphor for the creative process. And that involved Mother Earth. Our major crop was cotton, and we also grew corn, and we had a big vegetable garden. So we used lots of different seeds. And we planted these seeds into Mother Earth, who provided the nurturing environment that allowed those seeds to germinate and grow into plants that produce the products that we wanted. And of course, the interesting thing about it, as most of us know, is that the seeds were very specific. If you wanted to grow cotton, you planted cotton seed. If you wanted corn, you planted corn seed, and so on and so forth. And that's what you got. Mother Earth, of course, is not feminine either. But this is a term that we use for it because Mother Earth is that nurturing and provides that nurturing environment. Now let's go out on the skinny branches just a little bit. Everything that I've talked about up until now, we can agree with because we've either heard or we've seen evidence of this. But Ernest Holmes defines the feminine principle as pretty much as David did, but I'm going to quote it directly from his glossary. So Ernest Holmes defines the feminine principle as the universal soul. In humans, this is the subjective or subconscious intelligence. The universal medium or soul has been called the womb of nature and the Holy Mother because it is receptive to the Spirit and is impregnated with divine ideas. It gives birth to the ideas of the Spirit and is therefore the feminine principle. In other words, it is the universal law that we talk about a lot here in religious science. Now, we know that there is nothing in the physical world that did not begin as a thought or an idea. In other words, in the spiritual world. And that's how we come up with this saying, thoughts are things. And we say this a lot around here, that thoughts are things. Perhaps it would be better if we said thoughts produce things, but that takes more words, and so we don't say that. Okay? Now, Ernest Holmes has something else that I would like to share with you. The basis of our philosophy. And he makes it very simple. So he says there are three major things that he has always taught. One, there's one God common to all, in and through all things. Two, there's a universe that responds with mechanical regularity to the spontaneity of our thoughts. Basically what he's saying, there is a universal law that responds to our thoughts. And it doesn't have to be a big major thought. It could be anything that we think, okay? And it is anything that we think. And the third one, and this is so sweet, that we are to love one another. And these three points really are present in the teachings of Ernest Holmes all the time. Now, it's pretty easy for us to see how thought creates in the non-human world. If we look at global changes that are taking place, if we look at the weather and the seasons and all of this sort of thing. But what Ernest is telling us is that it also takes place in our lives, that our thinking is responsible for everything that happens in our lives, because our thoughts go into this universal law, which he calls the divine feminine, and creates healings and development of talents and pretty much everything that happens in our lives. Now, we can look at this as it happens in the chicken yard. Okay? The rooster is the masculine. The rooster would be comparable to the thought or the idea. And the hen is the feminine, who receives the thought or the idea and does all the work. So, everything that we see, including that with which we see, reveals the work of the divine feminine. So today, as you honor your mothers or whomever, I invite you to extend that honor to the divine feminine, which has placed a greater, which has played a greater part in our lives than we can ever even imagine. And so it is.